Okay, so if the Casagrandes really is a Mexican Cleveland show, then that means I might like it, because I actually watched the Cleveland show for its first season or two. The Casagrandes is a completely predictable spin-off in a time of completely predictable reboots and spin-offs. Specifically, it is a spin-off of The Loud House, centered around Ronnie Anne Santiago and her extended family, and it finally premiered last week, even though it feels like it's been running for months already, given they used the first several episodes of The Loud House Season 4 as backdoor pilots. For a while, it felt like you couldn't tune in to Nick's daily marathon of The Loud House without seeing an episode suffixed by "with the Casagrandes." While it's still way too early to know just how good or bad this whole idea to create a spin-off and start it this way was, ratings for the 8 backdoor episodes were lower than usual compared to both the end of Season 3 and later in Season 4 once the focus switched back to the Louds. So I don't know if making the Casagrandes a whole series is going to be a good idea in the long term, especially given Nick is really lacking in original ideas right now, especially for cartoons and sitcoms. The only other thing they have that could come out anytime soon is the much delayed and much feared for glitch text. I'd like to point out that I am coming in completely blind to this show. I haven't watched any of the episodes that set any of this up. This means that the Casagrandes will have to make its case to me all by itself. Honestly though, given my lukewarm reception to The Loud House upon its series premiere week a few years ago, I doubt I'm really going to care for this. But I'll at least watch the first couple episodes, and get 6 minutes of YouTube content out of them, before I completely put it down. So into the show we go then, and the show's theme song is exactly what you'd expect given this show's premise centering on Latinx characters. Is that a bad thing? No, not inherently, but it's pretty on the nose. And then ironically they just jump into this very white rock track for the title card, which otherwise also really screams at you, hey! This is a show about Hispanic people! The open-armed embrace makes Victor and Valentino look Caucasian. The other thing that feels really blatant is the derivative nature of it. You don't even have to get into the episode to know it's a Loud House spinoff. Admittedly, the art style and title card design give it away, and of course you don't want to mess with what works, but if you put the Loud House and the Casagrandes intros side by side, they're basically the same. Into the episode proper, and the show establishes that they're a big family by threatening to overload you with potential storylines that may or may not be explored. It's a very quick shot of at least some of the cast's personalities, but it borders on being too much. And then our main character Ronnie Anne comes in, setting us up on what is likely the path for the episode. She's noticed her board's been getting some extra wear and tear lately, and she's off to find out who did it and why. That gets resolved in about 20 seconds. An old hobby rears its head again in secret, but it might be causing a little trouble with our hidden teacher. And then a lot of trouble. It takes a bigger plan to cover up the other plan, then things get messy before they conveniently get better. While as a 2000s nostalgic, I appreciate the gratuitous skateboarding, I came away from the episode feeling little else. I wasn't all that endeared to the characters, nor did the more humorous moments really do much for me. Like, a diaper on a skateboard is novel, but it doesn't make up for the overall middling attempt at combining the multiple tropes we see in play here. Congratulations to the crew of The Loud House for making skateboarding look relatively boring. Were this 2009, skate fans would say it couldn't be done, but here we are. Meanwhile, over on his sister channel, Rob Dyrdek has certainly settled down, hasn't he? The Casagrandes gets one more episode to pique my interest, and it begins with us meeting Sid, who is a less blatant Asian American. The first thing we find out about her is that she's into K-pop, which is not as naturally fitting as you think it might be. Some cruel cats come and tear up the place, and somehow that leads to Ronnie Anne and Sid becoming dog walkers. Not the craziest jump I've ever seen on a cartoon. I know it's just some setup for later, but it just feels tenuous and kind of badly done to me. Maybe I'm just reading too much into this, but this is a weird one. All I'll say is that maybe the girls should be paying a little more attention to the details on these dogs. The girls quickly get carried away with both the number of dogs they're walking and the potential of all the profits. But when the dogs become too much to handle, these girls have to get back down to earth. And fast. Sid seemed a little ditzy to me, which, while a break from the typical Asian stereotype, doesn't necessarily feel like it meshes right with Ronnie Anne. Like, if you're trying to sell these two as a duo, a la SpongeBob and Patrick, Dipper and Mabel, or even Lincoln and Clyde, I think the differences between the two characters need to be drawn out a little more to make the small distinctions they currently have work. The situation right now, where these two characters are just slightly different from one another, but mostly kind of blah-samey, is just not that interesting. From these two episodes, the Casagrandes Casagrandes doesn't really sell me. I like that we're at least getting to know the characters a little bit, but in trying to introduce as many people in the building and around town as they have, all at once, we don't really get a chance to let them all sink in. I just don't feel it does enough to establish these characters, and it relies too heavily on the viewer already knowing these characters and their dynamics from watching The Loud House, which isn't necessarily a given. Because of that expectation, despite the characterization they do give in the show proper, things seem to fall flat. I think they'll have a tough time breaking the characters out of the one-trait descriptions they've established here, assuming they haven't already in the Loud House episodes they've been in, which again ties back to the big problem this show is going to have. The over-reliance on potential previous developments in the parent series is going to really hurt the show in its attempts to establish itself as its own distinct thing. But then again, I'm not sure the Casagrandes wants to, necessarily, given how much of the show's style and premise hews to designs laid out prior by the Loud House. These first episodes are almost too safe and too bland, especially the second one. There could be potential with this show, but in trying to stay true to the Loud House audience, the Casagrandes seems to have left it intentionally untapped. Hijinks ensue episodic kinds of shows have a tough time balancing character development and telling their story of the day. While it can be done with a decent premise, the Casagrandes doesn't really present itself as a show you can just jump into, and that's probably going to hurt its prospects long term, given how much it relies on tying itself to its parent series. So no, the Casagrandes isn't Mexican Cleveland show. It's just Mexican Loud House, which is good if you like the Loud House, but if not, you'll probably be left wanting. It's also not that great if you were expecting a more original idea from Nick, even within the boundaries of a spin-off. Nick's last spin-off, The Adventures of Kid Danger, at least tried to be more ambitious with its plots and do things that couldn't reasonably be done in the main show. The Casagrandes, by contrast, pretty much attempts to clone the Loud House in a different location and in a differently shaped building. It seems to be a show crafted for the intentions of ratings chasing, rather than being creative and unique, and that's probably going to lead to the show's demise sooner rather than later. Nick knows how to do this right, and you only have to go back to last year's premiere of Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to see it. You can check out my review of that right here. And before you watch that, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos from the world of television every single week. I'm Benzie Johnson Jr., I'm enthusiastic about television, and I'll see you next time.